Hello, all. Welcome to LTC Heroes podcast by Experience Care. Today, I am live and happy to be talking to Carol Silver-Elliott. We had a great chat about 6 months ago on the podcast. She is the president and CEO of Jewish Home Family. And today, I brought her in because long-term care has been in the news, not 100% positive, and I wanted to get her take on what's happening with staffing. Staffing has been an issue, obviously, not only for the last year, last 2 years, maybe for the last 5 years, but it's been in the news recently. Carol, just to kind of get things started, I know that you know it's trending. Can you give me a little take if things have changed, if you see anything getting better, not only for your organization, but your peers that you're familiar with?
Thank you. It's nice to see you again. I think, when we talk about the world of long-term care or older adult services, it's workforce, workforce, workforce. That has been a concern for us for a number of years, and certainly the last 2 years have exacerbated that. I think as we look to the future, it becomes an even bigger concern because if I look in my crystal ball, I think that we're going to see people that have far more complex medical needs that require more care, and we don't necessarily have all the hands to provide it. So it's a huge issue. There are a lot of elements to this issue as well. One certainly is that long-term care specifically is really powered by the certified nursing assistant. They are the lifeblood of everything we do. And as I often say to people when they ask me about this, none of us are sitting around the kitchen table with our kids and saying, "Oh, I got a great career idea for you. You could be a CNA." It's just not that kind of a role. So then the question becomes, well, how do we bring people into the profession to be CNAs? I think there are a lot of strategies that we need to be looking at. We need to be starting in the high school and even middle school level, engaging young people in what working with older adults can look like. What are the benefits? Why does it matter? I think we also need to be creating career ladders for people. Coming in as a CNA may be a wonderful starting point for people, but I also think that if we can help them to not just be motivated to, but be incentivized to grow into whatever that next role is. Maybe it's a higher level CNA. Maybe it's an LPN to an RN to an advanced practice nurse. And I will tell you, we have aides in our organization who have made that transition. So it's not an impossible thing to do, and we support that. I also think that we've got to take a look at, and I know I've said this before, immigration. There are many people in other countries that are willing to come here and work as aides. And in fact, if you look around any of our organizations, the vast majority of people who are working as CNAs come from other countries. We've proposed at the leading age level of special visa H2 age, such as was done for technology folks not that many years ago, to allow people who have the ability, the skill, and the passion to provide that kind of important care to come and be able to do that. So I think there are a lot of things involved in that. When we talk about nurses, because that's also a shortage, obviously there needs to be funding and support for nursing schools. We know there are people out there that want to go to nursing school, and there aren't instructors, there aren't programs. That makes it impossible for people. We actually are in a partnership with a facility out of the Midwest, another nonprofit, to recruit nurses from the Philippines. And we have done that quite successfully and will continue to do that. Our hope is that not only will nurse recruitment continue in this way, but CNA recruitment will continue as well. And last but not least, there are innovative programs out there. They need to be funded and nurtured. We're in one right now with our local community college to train CNAs. Not only are they getting the education, but at the same time, they're working for us 20 hours a week. So they're getting paid while they learn, and they have a guaranteed job when they finish. Lots of ways to be creative about this, but it takes energy, and of course it takes resources.
It does. Carol, I'm glad you mentioned both high school and immigrants. I just got back from the Georgia and Missouri convention, and as I was saying before we hit record, and it was the number one issue. And I did an educational speech in Missouri, and I asked them in the room. I said, "How many people here would pay for a smart high schooler or even a high school dropout to go do their CNA?" Every single person raised their hand in the room. Every single person. So, like we have to get creative if the government's not going to solve it for us. Not in the next 3 months, they're not going to solve it for us, and we got to get moving. And then I don't think I've told you this because it's been a while since we've spoken, but I became a CNA in Kansas in December.
You told me you were going to. That's pretty cool.
It was such a beautiful experience. And then I took LTC Heroes and interviewed a bunch of frontline staff. And the people who made me tear up most, Carol, were immigrants who were so in love with our industry that if they got offered $5 more at McDonald's down the road, they weren't leaving. So I'm glad you brought up both of those because it brings up memories, especially of some of those interviews. I'm interested in what you're hearing. We're in different parts of the country. I'm in Kansas here in the Northeast, and what are you hearing with agency? What are you hearing about apps? I just went to the state capitol in Jeff City, Missouri 2 days ago, and there's legislature trying to put a cap on how much agencies can charge, and they're also trying to make sure that apps that are working with agency are you all having the exact same issue? What's going on over there?
So agency is one of those unfortunately necessary evils I think we work with in our business. I will tell you that our goal as an organization is to be agency free. We achieve that on the nursing home campus. We're still trying to get there on the assisted living campus. During the worst days of COVID, when we were really struggling to get agency staffing in, was there a little price gouging going on? Absolutely. And, it is a concern. I think the other concern is that with agency staffing, the level of commitment and focus is just not the same. And it's concerning and it's disturbing. It is something that, it's not the ideal for anyone. And as people work for agencies, they're not working for our organizations. We lose the consistency. We lose the ability to fully train and educate and orient. And we lose the opportunity, I think, to provide the kind of quality, holistic wraparound care that we need to provide. So it is an ongoing concern.
I definitely know that you're more connected than I and have more foresight. Were you surprised of us being mentioned in the State of the Union, or any reactions to the fact sheet that came out last Monday?
So, many of us got a little heads up that this was going to be a topic in the State of the Union. My overall reaction to this, Peter, and I said this to my husband that same night, it puts me in the mind of the story of the man who's standing at the riverbank, right? And he's fishing bodies out of the water, one after another, and a person comes along and is observing this, and the guy fishing the bodies out says, help me, and the other person says, I'm going to walk down the riverbank. And he starts walking towards where the water's coming from. He said, what are you doing? I need you to help me. He said, no, I need to see who's throwing the bodies in. Where is this beginning? I think we're seeing that in some of these proposals around nursing homes. We're dealing with this, but the reality is it's way upstream and it's not being addressed. So what I mean when I say that is particularly around quality. What the emphasis has been, and is also very evident from what the State of the Union contained, it's all about let's ratchet up the supervision, let's ratchet up the penalties, yahoo, let's get more inspectors into the nursing homes. Great, but let's take a step back and look at where the systemic issues are. And more importantly, this is a hot button issue for me, let's look at those organizations that are one-star facilities. Let's look at the ones that cannot meet the standards that are allowed to continue operating and figure out how we address those before we come through with another layer of beating up organizations like ours that are consistently 5-star and committed to that. Recently they published a list in the state of New Jersey of 15 or 16 one-star facilities that continue to receive funding and continue to operate. And I think it's a travesty. When you have something like the terrible situation that happened early in COVID at Andover here in Jersey, and I think we all remember the headlines of the 17 bodies people found in a shed. That facility is still operating. They had years of infection control violations prior to COVID that resulted in penalties, and they're still functioning. They changed their name. They didn't change their ownership. And guess what? In this latest round of COVID, they had so much COVID within their staff and elders. It was over 100 cases, and each side, they had the National Guard going in and staffing. The most we saw in cases, and they were all staff in the recent outbreak, were 2. And those people were all vaxxed and boosted and came back in 5 days, no harm, no foul. So you tell me, how do you allow that kind of facility to operate? Don't punish everyone equally. Look at where the issues are, solve those. As I often say about regulation inspection, bring it on. We'll meet the challenge, we'll do what we have to do, but is that really the right approach? Is that really what's going to resolve it? Or should we be looking at those people who don't meet the standards, who are not providing quality care, and dealing with them first?
He talked about having sufficient staff, which is how we started talking,
Right.
And then he threw some punches at private equity, and I heard that over and over in the last 2 weeks at the conventions. I personally, I'm not a public policy expert, although I did study international politics for my master's and PhD. I'm not optimistic that things are going to change, even though we've gotten a lot of attention. What's your feel? Do you think we're headed in the right direction?
I think you're right. I think that, we already have staffing ratios in New Jersey. We're already with many of the things they were talking about. But I do think that unless the issue of private equity and care that is being driven by dollars rather than caring and compassion until that's addressed, we're not getting anywhere. And, it feels to me like there's so much power and influence around some of these organizations that we just spin around. We spin around and spin around, and we're not improving things for people. And I think it's a misuse of resources, but I also think it's a disservice to our older adults.
I agree with you. I want to make sure that we leave a little bit of room for optimism towards the end. And you shared it at the beginning. Like we need to be thinking about high schoolers, and we need to remember that the immigrants. Is there anything else that you would like to add? Are you optimistic now that we are coming out of another round of Omicron? Is there anything optimistic about staffing that you would like to share, either internally in your organization or even regionally in New Jersey?
So one thing I didn't mention to you earlier in the conversation, we created what I think is a really interesting program. We call it RCR, Resident Concierge Representative. And when we initially created it pre-COVID, we were thinking about it as a way to engage nursing students to come in and take a part-time job and do some things that were non-nursing but connecting. And post-COVID, we shifted and last summer started a program primarily for high school students. We hired these high school students. They worked from either 11 to 3 or 3 to 7, and they provided that extra pair of hands to help people go to and from the dining room, to sit and visit with them, to take part in an activity, non-clinical, but connecting. And what was so wonderful about that is we really saw places where it clicked, right? And some of these young people said, and some of them have stayed with us throughout the school year, I see all of a sudden that this could be an opportunity for me as a career. So regardless of what level that takes them to, knowing what long-term care feels like, knowing what senior services feel like, and wanting to be a part of it, I think there are opportunities there. I think that the creative options are unlimited. And I do think we're seeing a big shift in our field in the way we provide care and the kinds of things we do in being much more wellness and holistically focused. I think that's going to appeal to people to come back or to start with us, and to find out that there's tremendous, tremendous satisfaction in doing the work that we do.
What I like about your words and your initiative is it's one, it's proactive. Two, it's going after someone at a younger age. And I also like that leaning into you're leaning to the fact that there's much more to this industry, and there's something rewarding. There's something rewarding in the heart. After speaking to so many frontline workers, it's something that's intangible, that as an industry and people working in organizations, we need to find a way to explain those intangible benefits to someone when they're 15 or 16, because sometimes when you get the bug, you don't want to leave. I got the bug late at 40, got into long-term care. I wish I would have had the vision that you did to start a little bit earlier, but I'm thankful I'm here.
I always say that we get a gift from our elders every single day, and I truly believe that's true. Yesterday in our nursing home, we had a prayer service for the people of the Ukraine, and we had a room full of people for the first time in 2 years. We had a room full of people. We had an ecumenical service. We had a member of our staff, he's a CNA who has this extraordinary voice, who sang Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah and had everyone singing the chorus. And we had a resident who played her violin. We had tears running down our faces. And I looked around that room and I thought, this is what it's all about. It's that we are caring for as individuals, we are caring for individuals. We are enhancing their lives. We are helping them to feel connected and important and valued, which they are and which they deserve. And there is, I think, no greater gift than to be connected with someone and to give them the opportunities that they might not otherwise have. They can't repay that gift. And isn't that the purest kind of gift for us to be able to give?
Beautiful words. Carol, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you, Experience Care, for sponsoring this. If anyone hasn't listened to Carol on the LTC Heroes podcast, she taught me a lot about elder abuse, and she followed up and even told me about some people who were leading the way in Kansas. Her interview was inspiring. I've got a lot of feedback. Go check it out. Carol, thank you so much for taking 20 minutes out of your day to talk about staffing and the most up-to-date trending information heading out even from the White House.
Anytime, Peter. Nice to see you.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.